Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a great little group here. I thought I was going to have to be talking up in front of a group of people and be all nervous. So thank you for making it intimate and comfortable. Like she said, my name is Mel Robertson. I'm actually the founder of a company called Decluttering Spaces, where I actually help my clients get free from clutter, physical, mental, and emotional, so they can live clearer, simpler, and happier lives, because that's kind of our birthright. But what I want to really share with you guys today is a step-by-step simple process for really organizing any space. But before I do that, I just wanted to take a second and ask you guys, how many of you, when you try to organize on your own, feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start? Common, yeah. How many of you, when you've actually...
I just don't get there.
And then what about when you try to start and then you just get overwhelmed and frustrated and you just throw it all back and then it's worse than when you started? Right? Well, you're in the right place. Don't worry, because I, too, actually struggled with clutter. All growing up, I had two paths on the floor in my room. I had one from the door to my desk and one from the door to my bed, but I was really the only one who could navigate them. They weren't really there. The rest of my floor was covered with stuff, and my idea of cleaning was shoving everything under my bed or in my closet or one of my many junk drawers, because there were lots of junk drawers. But what I didn't realize at the time was that the outside is really just a mirror of the inside. Because on the inside, I was littered with clutter too. I was full of repressed emotions, resentments, fears, and limiting beliefs. It's what I call inner clutter. But to be quite honest, at that point in my life, clutter was really the least of my worries, because I wasn't expected to make it to see my 18th birthday alive. I had already had a childhood littered with trauma and loss, and at the age of 15 years old, I experienced what I consider to be the dark night of my soul, which was losing my older brother to suicide, being the one to discover his body, and inheriting all his belongings, all in the same fell swoop. So, needless to say, my life kind of spiraled out of control for a while. I was kicked out of my high school for being a danger to myself and others. This little 15-year-old girl was a danger to herself and others, getting kicked out of school. Yeah. And I was actually required to get intensive therapy in order to return. And so what that looked like for this little 15-year-old girl was I got to spend the next year and a half of my life living in a residential treatment center for adolescents. But unbeknownst to me, that is where my life would absolutely drastically change, because it was during my stay there that I was introduced to yoga and mindfulness. And now, yoga and mindfulness, really in a nutshell, what it taught me was how to come home and be present in my body for all that stuff I was running from, all that inner clutter. And as a result of being willing to be present for all of that, something totally unexpected happened in my life. I actually got organized from the inside out, kind of by accident. I wasn't trying to get organized. I wasn't trying to deal with my clutter. But because I became willing to bring my presence to my life, that willingness to bring my presence started to make space on the inside. And because the inside is just a mirror of the outside, I mean, the outside's a mirror of the inside, if you change the inside, the outside has to match. And so what that looked like was I just, over time, spontaneously and effortlessly started to want to go through my clutter and want to purge it. And gradually, over a period of about 12 years, I eventually got so decluttered that when I moved in with my wife into her 638 square foot studio, I basically owned about 6 feet worth of like hanging space in the closet for clothes, and I had a few boxes of personal belongings, which were like books, music, art supplies, and office supplies. I had let go of everything else. And so what I want to share with you today really is the culmination of my experience of gradually getting through my own clutter. And that is a simple step-by-step process called the 7 steps to manage, overwhelm, and organize any space. And I'll tell you that you can actually download this on my website afterwards. So I'll give you the link to that. You can just go to my website and do that. But before I go over all the 7 steps, let me just briefly list what they are for you, and then I'll go over them individually. So the 7 steps that I've found to manage, overwhelm, and organize any space are: step 1 is preparation. Step 2 is like with like. Step 3 is fresh start. Step 4 is decision time. That's the fun one. Step 5 is Homeward Bound. And step 6 is to finish the loose ends. And then step 7 is to form the habit. Now, we have a very limited amount of time together today, so if you're finding that you'd like to work with me one-on-one and go over these steps in person, I'm going to share with you a way we can do that at the end. But right now, we'll just dive right into the 7 steps. So now, step 1 is preparation. For most of you, when you think about preparation, you think, oh yeah, get it, deciding what you're going to do and gathering any supplies you need. But when it comes to clutter, the clutter around us has accumulated, quite frankly, because of our unwillingness to go look at it and deal with it. So that unwillingness is really just a mirror representation of our unwillingness to look within. So for me, the very first and most important step that I think in getting prepared to get organized is a little process I call allowing the now. You may call it meditation. I just say allowing the now to take the stigma of meditation out of it. But it's really just beginning to bring your presence to your life and witness your experience in each moment without judgment and without trying to change it. And the reason why that's so important is because that willingness alone to bring your presence to your life is what starts to dissolve the inner clutter. That's all that's required, is for you to show up and bring your presence. And that willingness begins to dissolve the inner clutter, and that starts to make space on the inside. And what happens when you make space on the inside? The outside has to match. It's law, as within, so without. And so what will start to happen for you too is you'll just naturally find that you want to start going through things that you didn't want to go through before. You just find that you'll just start going through stuff and letting go of things, and you'll find that maybe when you're shopping you won't necessarily buy as much anymore. But that happens gradually over time. Like I used to go into Bed Bath & Beyond and I'd buy a ton of stuff. Then I would go into Bed Bath & Beyond and I would put a bunch of stuff in my cart, but then before I got out the door, I just left the cart behind. Now I go into Bed Bath & Beyond, I don't really put anything in my cart. But that's how it gradually shifts over time, the more and more you're willing to bring your presence to your life. So the way that we do this, it's a process I call allowing the now, and it's really just taking the time to just close your eyes for a couple minutes and just get present in your body and pay attention to your breathing. And so if you want to experience that with me for just a moment, so you guys actually have an experience of it, I just want to guide you through for a second, and that way you'll have something to take home with you today. So if you want to just uncross your legs and put your feet flat on the floor and just relax in your chair, and if you feel comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And all I want you to do is just turn your attention to your breathing with your mind's eye. You're just watching your breathing like a spectator watching a sport. You're not trying to do anything about it. You're just watching it. What does it feel like to be breathing in your body in this moment? Where do you feel your breath when you breathe in and out? Maybe you feel your chest or your belly rise. Maybe you feel your breath at the back of your throat. Where do you notice your breath in your body?
My stomach.
And breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Now when you feel comfortable, go ahead and open your eyes and come back to the room. And that's all it takes to bring your presence back to your life. It's that simple. And if you don't take anything else from this talk today and you just start taking 5 minutes a day to do this every day, that's where the magic will happen, because that's how all these steps developed. I became willing to bring my presence to my life. I spontaneously started going through my own clutter, and I found these systems by going through my own clutter. So what I'm about to share with you is the direct result of this one practice, okay? And so after you've taken the time to just bring your presence back to your life, Now go ahead and think about, okay, what area am I going to choose to work on today? So you want to choose the area that you're going to be working on. And what I want to say here is start small. Don't go tackle the pantry or the garage or your closet. Okay, start with a small junk drawer or a nightstand surface, or maybe you've got a bag of stuff that's kind of been collecting, you've been meaning to go through, those bags that get full of stuff, So start small. So bring your presence back to your life. Choose what area you're going to work on. And then the third and final part to preparing to get organized is to actually gather the supplies you're going to need. Now, for most of us, it'll probably be a container for trash, recycle, and donate. But what I also want you to get here is whatever you're going to need to clean the area that you've decided to work on, because we're also going to clean the space as well as part of this process. So you're going to bring your presence back to your life, choose what area you're going to work on, and then you're going to gather the supplies before you move on to step 2. Once you've done all that, you're ready for step 2, which is what I call like with like. Now, all this step is a simple sorting process. I want you to treat this part of the process like a robot. You're just robotically sorting into general categories. The most important thing is you are not making any decisions here. We do not decide if we're keeping an item or getting rid of it at this point. That is the most stressful part of the process. We'll leave that till later, okay? So what you're going to do is, and then the other thing I want to say is don't go all Marie Kondo and dump it out in a pile in front of you. That is the most overwhelming thing you could possibly do to yourself. It's already contained, it's already on a surface or in a drawer or in a bag. So all you're going to do is you're going to take things out one at a time or groups of the same item. If you have a bunch of pens, you can grab all the pens. If you have a bunch of pieces of paper, grab all the paper. But all you're going to do is sort into very general categories first. You can make further, separations of your categories and finer sort later. But the whole point is to get everything pulled out in an orderly fashion, not disorganized all over the place, so that you have everything sorted into general categories and you can actually see what you have. It's much easier to make a decision about letting go of something when you see you have 10 of them in front of you versus you're only looking at one and there's 9 more somewhere else. If you see that you have 10, you're more likely to be able to let go of some than not. So we do this part first. We don't make any decisions. The only exception is if you have something that's trash. You don't have to sort trash. You can put the trash right in the trash bag, okay? But other than that, decision making is off. Just sort like a robot. So all you're going to do is you're just going to pull the items out and sort into general categories around you, whatever you use the item for. Like a rubber spatula for me is for the kitchen, but for an artist it goes in arts and crafts. So what do you use the item for? What general category is it for you? I mean, you have office supplies, you have hardware and tools, you have arts and crafts, clothing, memorabilia, gift wrap, those kind of things. Whatever categories are in what you're working on, you're just going to sort in a general fashion, okay? Once you've got everything sorted, now what you're working on, whether it be a bag or a box or a surface or a drawer, that's all clear and empty now. So now we're ready for step 3, which is a fresh start. And all fresh start is just cleaning the dirt and debris from what we were working on. So if we're going to put anything away, we're putting it back on a clean surface. But the other part about this step and why I have it here is because it creates a mental break from having to decide what category something is, because some people have a hard time. That's a decision you have to make. What do I use this for? What category is this? That actually takes energy. And so that's a decision-making process. So then we just take a minute to clean the area that we're working on, and it just creates a little bit of mental space from having to decide what category something belongs in, to the big decision. Am I keeping it or am I letting it go? So we just take a minute to clean the area that we're working on before we move into the good and fun step, decision time, step 4. And this is where you're actually going to take the time to decide whether it stays or it goes. But right now, you have a bunch of piles around you, these different categories that are around you. And so you can move in either one of 2 ways. You can either start from the smallest to the largest category first, or the easiest to make decisions about to the hardest to make the decisions about. Because some people, the smallest pile is something that's really hard for them to decide about. So just move on to the next one. It's really about starting simple and starting small and building on that. So you want to start with what's easy, so you gain your confidence, you find yourself finishing what you're starting, and you want to keep moving through. So starting with the smallest pile or the easiest pile, what you're going to do here is you're going to take one item at a time, and you're going to bring your presence to that one item at a time. Just like we did, just take a breath, you're going to look at it, and it's as simple, am I keeping it or am I letting it go first? That's the first decision. If you're keeping it, just set it to the side of the pile that you're going through. That'll be your keep pile. If you're letting it go, that's when you're going to decide, is it usable still? Can I donate it, or is it recycle or trash? It's that simple. Then you move on to the next item. One of the tendencies I notice is when I'm working with clients and I'm helping them go through things, they'll pick something up, they'll look at it, they won't even realize that it's hard to decide, they'll unconsciously set it down and start a whole new pile. And then pick something else up. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what about that? Oh, yeah. So one thing at a time, make the decision about it. Does it stay or does it go? And then if it's going, is it usable? Can I donate it, or does it need to be trashed or recycled? So you're going to continue with that, going through each pile from either smallest to largest or easiest to hardest, whatever you've decided to do, until you've gotten through every pile that you have there. Once you've done that, now you're left with everything that you're keeping. And for the most part, what I've seen with every client that I work with is, for the most part, you're going to let go of 30 to 60% without even really trying. It's going to shrink by that much just without even really trying, because you're willing to actually look at it and decide. And once you're willing to look at something, people will be like, oh, there's nothing I'm going to get rid of in there. And they go, well, let's look anyway. And then oh, yeah, I can let go of this. Oh, I can let go of this. So it's really just about bringing your presence and getting through each pile one at a time. So once you've made all your decisions and you know what you're keeping, now it's time for Homeward Bound, step 5. And that's where you're going to put everything away. So one of the things here that I like to recommend is, there's lots of stuff that you know where it goes already, but there's going to be some things that you didn't put away because you don't have a home for them and you don't quite know where they go yet. So what I want you to do first is to put everything away that you already know where it goes. Start with the easy stuff. Put everything away that you already know where it goes and you already know where it has a home. Okay? Don't worry if that area is cluttered too and you need to work on that. You're going to get to that later. We need to start somewhere. So you'll probably be adding some stuff to an already cluttered area, and that's okay. We will get to that. Especially when there's lots of clutter and lots of cabinets and drawers. There's going to be a little bit of musical chairs with some stuff as you're going through everything gradually. Okay? So get everything put away that you know where it goes first, and then come back to the stuff that you're not so sure about. So just a couple things to think about with this stuff is that it really comes down to personal preference. There are thousands of organizing systems out there and articles you can read and how to do this and where to do that. But what I really tell my clients is, it has to work for you. You have to put it away somewhere where you'll be able to remember where it is. It'll be easy for you to pull out and use, but it'll also be easy for you to put away, because if you can't remember where it is, you won't use it. If it's hard for you to pull out, you're not going to want to use it. And if it's hard to put away, you're not going to put it away, and then more clutter is just going to build up. So just think about, take that minute to just get present again and think about, what do I use this for? Where will I be using this item when I actually need to use it? And can I keep it near where I'd be doing that activity? You know, not everybody has the opportunity to do that. Not everybody has a craft room or whatever, or a big garage. But if you can, try to keep it near where you're going to use it. That's always easiest. But that's not always the case. So just work with what you have and what space you have. But work with trying to keep like with like. So stuff that belongs in the kitchen, keep in the kitchen. You know, stuff that's hardware and tools, keep with the rest of your hardware and tools. Just trying to keep like with like. And then once you've put everything away, now it's time to finish up those loose ends. So what are those pesky little loose ends that we have to finish up? Well, we have some trash and recycle that we probably need to take outside. But most importantly, we probably have some giveaway items that we need to get out of the house, because if we don't get rid of them soon, we're probably going to peek in there and say, oh, I'm not going to get rid of that. So we want to get rid of the donations as fast as possible. If you can get them to a donation center yourself, go ahead and take them if you have time that day. If you're not able to take the donations yourself, there's plenty of places that will pick them up. At least make the phone call and schedule the pickup. It may not get picked up today, but you've done that final piece. So there's nothing left undone from this. You've followed all the way through to the end. Once you've finished all the loose ends, you've actually successfully decluttered and organized a space in your house. So awesome job. It's really, really simple when you follow this step-by-step process. Once you've successfully organized a space, now it's time to form the habit. Now it's time to make it stick. Now it's time to make it consistent. So this step of the process is making the commitment to yourself that you're going to set some time aside and start working on this on a regular basis. Now, it might be one day a week for 20, 30 minutes. It might be a few days a week. Whatever works for you, start small and build your way up until you're just consistently and habitually decluttering things. Now, part of my day, it's like I have this kind of routine. Like I work in my business, and then when I come home, done everything I need to do around the house, then I like to play in the kitchen. And if I'm done playing in the kitchen, I have time left, what I'm doing is I'm decluttering something. I'm like going through, it's just what I love to do, like on my free time. From a kid who had clutter everywhere to someone who now can't tolerate it. I mean, I literally have a nightstand that has 6 drawers in it. 4 of them are empty, and they've been that way for years because I love clear space today. That's what starts to change when you make the space on the inside. You want more clear space outside. We bought our house in March of last year. We've been living in it full time since June of last year, and we still have not hung a picture on the wall. We have frames up there that have stands, but we have not attached anything to the wall.
Think you're going to move or something?
No, we just, commitment issues probably. But what I really recommend to all my clients is to actually make an appointment with yourself in your calendar, like you would for a doctor's appointment or coming here for a group or getting your hair done. You actually schedule it with yourself and make the appointment and show up. And if you find that you're just making an appointment and you're not showing up for yourself, consider, having one of you guys be each other's accountability partners where you have to call each other every day or call each other once a week and check in, and you have to explain why you did or didn't do what you were supposed to do that week. And if that doesn't work for you, consider hiring a coach that will whip you in the butt and keep you in track. But really, just developing the consistency is just about making time for it and showing up. But like I said before, if you just make the time to take 5 minutes a day to just close your eyes and get present in your body for each moment, like that alone will start to change everything. I didn't know that by practicing yoga and meditation that I was going to wind up like becoming this uncluttered person who couldn't tolerate clutter. Like I can let my desk get a little bit messy, but I can't work from a messy desk. I have to have clear space, and I wasn't like that as a kid. So it's a total shift from being completely cluttered, chaotic, and disorganized and completely ungrounded and anxious to someone who's cannot tolerate clutter. I mean, I had family in the house for a couple days, and we don't usually have people in our house. And I mean, there's things growing on places everywhere. All the surfaces are starting to get covered, and I'm like, okay, we gotta clear here. I can't take it anymore. But it really starts to change from the inside out. Like it really comes from, everybody wants to, hire an organizer or focus on the systems, or if I just get these containers, if I just do this outside stuff. I'm telling you, if you just do the inside piece first, the outside will take care of itself. That's the real trick. That's where the magic happens, because when you show up and you make space for yourself, you're making space for the magic to happen. Like, you make space for the magic to happen. If we have all this clutter inside of us, it just kind of blocks the flow for abundance, for joy, and all the great things that we're supposed to have in our lives. So my recommendation to you is to just make the commitment to yourself that you're going to show up for your life and be present and bring your presence to your life, and the rest will change. And that's the 7 steps to manage overwhelm. I hope you guys found that helpful today. And like I said, I would share with you a way that you could work with me individually if you wanted to. So for those of you that are a part of this group, what I wanted to offer you is, if you wanted to go over these steps in person, one-on-one, I'm doing a 3 hours for $99 special where you get me to come in your house and work with you on these steps and help you actually get through some of your own clutter for $99, which is a 61% savings off my normal hourly rates. So without any further ado, I'd like to open up for any questions.
Do you have a business card?
I do.
My favorite thing is junk drawer. And I don't want to give up junk drawer, but I find that I just moved, as everybody knows. And so the drawer space is not the same as it was in the big house, where I had 3 junk drawers. And I don't know how to get down to 1 junk drawer and be happy with that.
It's a gradual process over time of being, like, every time you go through stuff and you let stuff go, you're building a muscle of letting go. Like, you won't let go of everything all at once. You've accumulated it over time. You can't just go in and let go of it all at once. It would actually be too traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
oh, yeah.
So
I know exactly what you mean.
So with your junk drawers, what I would recommend is, going through one more time and getting down to what will actually fit, and then containing everything else in a box and putting it in the garage and writing the date on it or putting it somewhere. And if you haven't needed anything in that box in 6 months, then bye-bye. But it's really just consistently going through it over and over again. I mean, it took me 12 years to get through my stuff. And quite honestly, I was really fortunate to not have a lot of stuff. I pretty much rented apartments from people. So when I moved in with my wife, the only furniture items I had was a bed, a bookcase, and a side table. And I left that all in the alley for someone. I didn't have a lot of furniture. So I didn't have a lot of accumulation because I had so much trauma, and I learned this so young. Every time I moved, from when I got out at the age of 17 to now, I'm like, every time I move, I'm purging and letting go, and you just let go of tons of stuff, and there's nothing that I've ever regretted letting go of.
But that's the emotional connection, and I find that right now, that's the hardest part for me, is the emotional connection to things, to history, to, I've been on the planet a lot of years. And through those years, I've accumulated, and it's not junk. I mean, forget the junk drawer now. We're talking about, things that are important. And I guess for me, what I'm groping with and grappling with is severing that emotional connection.
I think that really comes with the practice. Like, the more you're willing to show up for your life, and because here's the thing, like, when we show up and we become present and we sit and we breathe, we're in a place of neutrality. When we're not, when we have our stuff, we're either clinging to it and hanging on to it because we're attached to it, or we're avoiding it, which is resistance, which is more energy. There's no neutrality. It's either a grasping and a hanging on or a pushing away, and that's always a struggle, and that keeps us stuck. When we learn to just sit and be and let go, that makes the space so that over time, that emotional connection is going to lessen. It's going to release more and more over time. Like, for me, there's just certain things that we get stuck on. Like, I was really stuck on having books and CDs for the longest time, like my library and my CDs. But then there was this other thing where I actually didn't go to college, but I audited 2 classes. And there's one class I absolutely loved. It was called Symbolic Logic. And I was super attached to all my work from that class. I mean, and that was in 2004 that I went to that class, right? And I was so attached to it that every time I moved, I couldn't let go of my work or the worksheets or anything from the teacher. I was never going to use it again, but I was super attached to it. We just get stuck with stuff. And it was years and years before I got to the place where, okay, I'll get rid of my work and I'll keep the worksheets. Then it's okay, finally I can just let go of it all. But I mean, we're talking about 2004 to 2012 type of thing here,
I'm talking about 25 years ago when I went to graduate school and still have every tape and every notebook and every paper that I got.
Yep. I really recommend making the allowing the now practice part of your daily. If you don't start making time to just declutter your life, make the commitment that you're just going to take 5 minutes a day to show up for yourself. You're just going to take 5 minutes to just close your eyes and feel what it feels like to be in your body today. To just get present with you and make space for you, We spend so much time running around, making space for other people, doing things for everybody else. And we're going. The phone's always going off. You've got these red dots on your phone telling you all these indications. You have all these emails, all these text messages. Everything is constantly pulling you in every which way that we're never really present with ourselves. It takes a really determined effort to make that practice happen. But when you make this piece happen, the rest really will take care of itself. The attachment to stuff will lessen. It doesn't go away all at once. It is something that gradually happens over time. Unfortunately, there are no quick fixes. I wish I could wave a magic wand and all the attachment would go.
Are you taking care of somebody right now?
No.
Well, that's why it's harder for you, because everything is relative. Now that I have to take care of my wife, and that's my main goal in life right now, everything else less important.
Mm-hmm.
So things that I had a hard time before getting rid of now, it doesn't mean much to me.
It's easier
It's
there.
easier.
Interesting.
Yeah, perspective changes over
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Why don't you write a
absolutely.
book
Why don't I write a book?
with all your stories and everything?
That's a good idea.
And one other thing I want to say about stuff, like I shared with you that I lost my brother when I was 15 and I inherited all his stuff. To this day, I actually don't have a single thing of his. I don't have his obituary. I don't have a single item of his, and I don't have any. I feel so good that I didn't have to lug all of that stuff around with me for all the years. I let it all go. Now, I was in a really bad place, so I didn't let it go in the greatest of ways. I sold it all for drug money. But years later, like I have no regret that I'm not carrying it with me. I don't need stuff to have a connection to my brother.
Right.
Like I have a relationship and a memory of my brother.
Yeah.
I don't have to have his physical stuff. So stuff actually keeps us stuck, you know, when we're stuck on stuff. I actually
I like that, stuck on stuff.
Mm-hmm. I have one thing from my grandmother when she passed, only because of a story she told me about myself when I was a kid. You know those wash basins with the pitcher? You know? Well, my grandfather gave that to her as an anniversary present. And little 5-year-old kid or however old I was at the time, I just looked at my Nana and said, when you die, can I have that? Like, why would I say that? But so she made sure that I got that when she passed away. But so I only have that because of that story. Like, and if I let go of it, I'm going to give it to my niece. But like, I don't have any stuff of anybody else's. I don't hang on to stuff. That just
What
starts.
about pictures?
They're all digital now.
Okay.
Oh.
Everything's digital now.
You took a picture of all your photos, is that what you
Oh no, like
did?
nowadays, like I don't
Oh,
have
no,
a
what
lot of
about
old photos.
Oh, but what if you have old photos?
You can digitize them, then you don't have to store them. They take up less space. I mean, how often do you really go through and look at them?
Every day.
You do?
Yeah. Oh.
Yes, I have a picture of my son who passed. And every day I look at him,
Mm-hmm.
and it reminds me of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why did I even bring that up?
Hey, you need no. Don't be sorry. You needed to.
Well, I do the same thing
You look at pictures.
in regards to my parents
Mm-hmm.
and my grandmother and my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard to throw pictures away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, there's great options now. I mean, before digital, I mean, I see so many
Yeah.
people that have boxes and boxes of pictures. I mean, really, it's like you can have someone digitize them for you and have them, you know, stored so you don't actually have to store the pictures. Now that we've moved into the digital age, most people just don't print them out anymore. They're on your phone. You have a few. Like I have a couple pictures around the house, but most of them are on my phone.
Okay.
Some years ago, before we were moving, I went to a shop. I don't know if it was a photographer or what, and I had some black and white pictures and the negatives. And I said, you know, I told him I want to get rid of these and how can I do that? He picked one up and he said, you never get rid of this. Like, you know, he was a purist, I mean, and because there's, you can't replace them or whatever, but, I mean, I figured out some things I just took a picture and I have it on my computer and got rid of, but there's still more.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but he just scared me.
Mhm.
Never get rid of that.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, too, you can always, I mean, the pictures that we accumulate, I mean, how many of them, we take a lot of photos. How many of them are really the important shots that we really want to keep? So again,
Right,
it's
right. First
going
and-
through them and making a
coloring
purge
those.
and
Yeah.
paring it down and that kind of thing. And you'll let go of more and more over time. I mean, my physical photo albums, I have like 3 little photo albums that my stepmother made for me when I moved out here of like my family and stuff. And that's pretty much all I have for physical photos and a frame of my grandmother after she passed. But other than that, and like my wife's photos. But other than that, all our photos are digital. We don't have many photos printed out anymore.
And how do you deal with paperwork? Because that's mainly my problem. Once we moved, we didn't have a whole lot of stuff that we don't use.
Mm-hmm.
But papers come every day,
Mhm.
you know, in the mail, or you pick up even a tidbits or the health letters and stuff,
Mhm.
and you read them, and then the piles gradually
Mhm.
get up, and then I'll sit down once in a while and go through them. And if something's important, I type it on my computer
Mhm.
in notes or something. But it's really hard to get through all that paper stuff.
Yeah, it's very time consuming, but again, it's that whole you bring your presence to it and actually spend the time with it. Like when we get the mail every day, we get the mail and whatever's recycled goes directly into the recycle bin. We don't even deal with anything that, if it's junk, it's going in the recycle bin. And then most of the stuff, if a little magazine comes in that I want to peek at, it goes on, we have a little coffee table tray, it goes out there, I peek at it, I scan it, and then it goes right into the recycle bin. Because I just want to peek at it, I'm not going to do anything with it. But in all honesty, most of the time we let stuff accumulate. We think we're going to look at it, but then we don't. So I leave it out like right because my wife and I like I'm the organizer, but my wife is OCD, so there's like no things on places in our house. And so if I leave something for too long, she'll just get rid of it anyway. So if I want to look at it, I have to tell her, don't get rid of this. I'm going to look at it. Then we're going to go. But it's really just dealing with it in the moment. Like all the recycle goes right into the recycle bin as soon as we get it, and I open my mail immediately and put it away. Don't get the mail if you're not ready to deal with it.
Yeah, or getting in the habit. A friend of mine who worked for IBM said they trained them to touch a piece of paper just once.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put it in your desk if it's a file, or you trash it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could get in the habit, but I'm comfortably seated at the kitchen table, and so I'll put this here, although it should go in the file. I have to get in the habit of doing it right away instead of letting it pile up, but it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
With my files, I get almost all bills now electronically.
Yep.
Yes, I do,
Yep.
I do too.
And if I do get something, a piece of paper that I want to keep, I have a scanner. I just scan it and file it and then shred the original.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
With the exception of some things I save for, income tax,
Yeah.
substantiation and
Right,
things. I do
right.
have some paper files that way.
Mhm.
Right.
Anyway, it made a big difference because I used to have file drawers full of,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's,
Down to
and it's organized much
Yep.
better. I can find it on my computer, usually
Yeah, organize my
quicker
computer for me.
than,
Yeah.
because I can
Right.
just do a
Like
search
desktop.
through my files
That's
looking
right.
for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
good idea.
I have a problem being that dependent on a machine.
Oh.
Yeah,
On
I
the-
still do a
on
paper
my-
schedule. I don't do a calendar.
I do
on
paper, I'm
computer.
the only, people make fun of me because I use the daytimer system, and I laugh when people make fun of it and say, if I was the only person on the planet using this system, they would not be in business. So other people have to be doing it
Mhm.
also.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. I don't trust technology with my schedule.
Okay.
If I have some furnitures I want to get rid of,
Uh-huh.
some of them are antique. Do you have on your website a list of places that buy antique?
No, but I
furniture?
can help you find consignment shops if you want to. There's lots of
Right.
consignment shops that are around. I have a truck. I can haul it for you and bring it over there. So.
Okay, so you work with some of them?
No, I mean I can just find them for you. I'm pretty
Oh.
new here, so I haven't developed a lot of relationships. Most of my clients just donate everything, and I just take it to Goodwill or Revivals or Angel
When I was
View.
trying to get rid of stuff in the house, if you take a picture of it
Mm-hmm.
and then take it to
To
the,
the
or
Okay,
email it to them,
okay.
they'll tell you whether or not they
They're
take
interested.
that kind of furniture. Like
Okay.
I had to go through a few consignment because my stuff was not consistent with
Do you
what
live
they're.
near here?
I
Yeah,
see.
I live in
Okay, I
California
got it.
style.
Because I see
Yeah.
the 619.
And I sold
Yeah,
some
originally from
things
San
after
Diego.
we moved to the,
I'm going,
estate
wait,
treasures
she
or
came
whatever
a
it
long
is.
ways.
And, cause they just didn't fit in this,
Mhm.
California condo. There,
Mhm.
a lot of people come here with their antiques, and
What?
some people do
Yeah.
use it, and others, even the person that I used as a decorator, she moved from Chicago, and she said she had all antiques. And within the first year, it was all in the consignment shop,
Mhm.
because she lived in Palm Springs and everything was more modern.
Yeah.
So some things they'll take.
Yeah.
And the other thing to
I
think
know.
about too is that if you have to hire someone to come help you bring it to consignment, and what you're only going to get usually 50 or 40%, they're going to take the bigger cut, and the time you have to. Is it worth it financially for you to actually do that, or just donate it to a donation center and get the tax write-off?
Right.
Kind of weighing out what makes more sense. A lot of times
Taxes.
it doesn't make a lot of sense because you're not going to get. Where on the taxes you can actually claim the value of what it's worth, whereas consignment you're going to get 40 to 50% of what they sell it for, which is
Yeah.
way lower than what you paid for it. I mean, way lower.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
And some of those will come and pick up?
Mhm.
Some
Yes.
places will, I don't know,
Oh, yeah, no,
consignment
they-
will pick up?
Yes, if they want, if they're gonna take your
If they-
stuff, they will send somebody.
Oh,
And
nice.
they build that into whatever they, you're paying for it.
Okay.
But you're not paying for it,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
cash out of pocket. It's, they'll come, they'll pick it up, and then it'll sit there, and then you have to keep going, kind of contacting them to, see what the status is.
Mhm.
But-
And usually every 30 days they reduce the price.
Exactly.
So if it doesn't sell in the first 30 days, then they're going to reduce it, and then if it doesn't sell in another 30 days, they
And
reduce
then
it. Then 90
ultimately-
days, if it doesn't sell, it's gone. If you don't come pick it up.
Then they donate it.
If you don't come pick it
Right.
up.
Right.
And do they ask you what's the minimum you wanna go?
No,
No,
they
they
tell
give
you,
you a-
they give
yeah.
you
Uh,
what they
estimate.
feel is the value.
I see.
they
That it'll
give.
sell for.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I see, okay.
Also with
Yeah.
taxes, I mean, just check with your tax person
It
because
doesn't mean
with the
anything.
new tax laws,
Right,
the standard deduction for married couples over 65 is now like $26,000. If you don't have a mortgage, property and sales tax, all the state taxes are limited to 10 grand.
right.
A lot of people cannot get over that 26,000 threshold, so
what's
that
the point?
means your charitable deductions are, it's in that.
Okay.
So unless you can get over it,
Yeah.
So if somebody makes more than 26,000?
No,
No,
no.
that's,
I'm talking about the amount you can
Itemized
deduct
deductions.
off of your income.
Itemized
So-
deductions, yeah.
Right, if you can't if all your itemized deductions don't add up to like 26,000, if you're a married couple
Oh, I see what you're saying.
filing jointly, then
Okay, I got
you're
it.
better off taking the
Yeah.
Standard
the standard
deduction.
deduction.
Mhm.
right, right.
Okay.
But I think that even in that line, if you feel like, this is a piece, like, I have a table now that is now in the garage that didn't fit in the house and it's gotta go. But when I call the charity that I'm working with now, I feel like, that's going to to
So you're
good
working with a
cause.
charity, not a consignment.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for
Uh-huh.
the rest of the items.
Okay.
I mean, I did consignment because I had a huge dining room
Mm-hmm.
and big pieces that were very heavy and a huge table that was made for that room and, all that stuff. That went to consignment. But now this is a miscellaneous table here or something here. And,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of makes you feel good just to donate something without it having a monetary
Yeah.
compensation.
Yeah, we always have a bag in our closet that's containing we're always letting go of stuff. I always have a bag where I'm throwing stuff in, and
Right.
Yeah.
I'm always going to donate.
When we first started our moving process, it was a few years of emptying out our house back east, but a lot of stuff went to my children if they wanted it. And it was kind of cool because then we would go to their house and we'd sit in the dining room chairs
Uh-huh.
and we'd look at something else, gave them a lot of fancy dishes and we used them when we visit them. But I was down to a whole shelf in my kitchen of fancy glassware that was too small for wine and not big enough for dessert and really pretty glasses. So I sent a picture to my daughters and I said, I'm gonna donate these. And one of them said, I'll take them. So now I have to pack them up and take them to her when we go this summer because she entertains a lot and she'll find a used port or,
Yep.
port
Yep.
wine or whatever they do.
Or tequila.
Or, that's right.
Ah,
So,
Good
that
quality.
clears another whole shelf.
Nice.
'Cause
Where back
I'm
east?
not gonna use them, and yet they're so pretty,
Mhm.
I hate to part with them, it's hard, but you get over it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ultimately it's just stuff, and none of us can take it with us when we go, and whatever we don't get through is left for the people behind us to have to deal with. And I've watched a lot of people have to deal with other people's stuff that they're left behind,
Yeah, right.
and it's just really painful the person that it's left
I don't
to.
wanna do that to my children. Yeah.
And I think that's really,
70 years.
in our demographic, in this room, the thing that we have to always keep in mind is that it's just stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the psychological bridge that you have to figure out how to cross over, is that it's just stuff and do you need it? And it's, you know, it's a challenge, there's no question, because at the same time that you're trying to hold on to your life and live it,
Mm-hmm.
as the same time that you're being asked to divest of your life
Mm-hmm.
and accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is tough. This
Mhm.
is not easy stuff. And that's why I was so glad when I met Mel and she agreed to come in, because I think that we're talking about what she does and how you do it. At the same time, we are trying to be realistic about where we are and what is important. And it's challenging
Mhm.
at best. It is. I love the 7 steps, and then I think the 8th step is the challenge of executing the 7 steps.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to throw out another question and about decluttering, and that's about clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
What's
I
your question?
I think that that's one of the hardest things for the hardest thing for me.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I like about Marie Kondo, if you're familiar with her method, is basically, hers is like, does it spark joy? Well, mine is basically, because my whole premise and why I started my business was to actually help people get to the root of their clutter so they can access their birthright, which is to be happy and abundant in every area of your life. And when science has already proven that everything is energy, so everything that's created, your shirt, that cup, this phone, like, it's energy, so that means that it's constantly moving, it's vibrating, it's always in motion. And so when you make something like a shirt or a pair of shorts or whatever, it's made for a purpose. It's made to be worn. And so if you have all these clothes, but yet they're not being worn, their purpose is stifled. And so that's stuck energy that is then blocking the flow of abundance from coming into your life. People think that if they let go of all this stuff that they have around them, that they're going to feel like they don't have enough, or it's all going to be lost. But the more space you make, the more simple your life gets, and the less stuff that you want around you. And so when it comes to like clothing or anything, I always tell clients to think about, like, if you don't love it, like, why do you have it? If you're not wearing it and you don't love it, why do you have it? Like, I only have in my wardrobe clothes that I actually wear that I love. I don't buy clothes that I don't like, and I don't hang on to stuff that I don't like. As you can tell, I like to dress nice and comfortably. This is how I dress every day. And I like to keep it simple. And then we have all these clothes that we might fit into someday.
Fit into it, yeah.
If it's been 6 months or a year,
They're so nice, and I'm going to fit in it someday.
but 6 months to a year, forget about it. Somebody else could be wearing those clothes. There's so many people out there that need clothes that they could be getting used. And when you're ready to fit into that size again, you'll want to be rewarding yourself for being able to fit into that size, so buy something new, And it's also coming from that place, well, if we let go, we're not going to have enough to get it again in the future, and that comes from that place of lack. And that all starts to change when you make that time to be present with yourself. When you can take 5 minutes a day and start coming home and being present and just allowing the now and releasing the grasping and the resistance, like, all of that starts to change. Our attachment to stuff, our need to hang on to things and keep ourselves surrounded with stuff, that slowly starts to change over time. And so just be gentle with yourself, but make the commitment that you're going to show up and you're going to make time for yourself every day. Be surprised what starts to change. I mean, I actually, from this simple little practice of taking 5 minutes a day, I had actually gotten to a place in my life where I struggled with a lot of other things in my life. And my wife and I had been married, I think, for 4 years. And she was really struggling with insomnia. And we were in that 638 square foot studio, so the only door that closed was the door to the condo and the door to the bathroom. There was no other place to go. So if she didn't sleep, I didn't sleep. And I was actually the manager of a furniture delivery and installation company, so I had all men under me. I was the only girl who worked there, and I was the manager. And I worked for a guy who was really horrible to work for, never had anything positive to say, was always negative. So I worked in this really negative environment. I was absolutely sleep deprived. I wasn't doing anything to take care of myself. I wasn't taking 5 minutes a day to take care of myself at all. That had all gone by the wayside. And I got to a place where I just didn't want to be here anymore. Like, I was so miserable and I was so stressed out and so tapped out. Like, it was just easier to think about ending my life at like 34 years or however old I was then, than going on. And I had to make a decision in that moment. I was either going to decide to take my life right now and just be done with it, or I was going to become willing to do whatever it takes to access my birthright. Because everything that I had ever read, I knew that it was our birthright to be happy and abundant in every area of our life. I knew it was possible. I just had to make the decision whether I was going to be willing to do the work. And so I made the decision that I was going to make my happiness my number one priority. And I did one of two things. I made this my practice, the 5 minutes a day, and I became what I call a happiness-seeking missile, which means that everywhere I went, I found something that brought me joy. I found something I could appreciate instead of defaulting to something negative. Because everywhere we go, it's like, oh, or something negative, or I don't like that, or why'd they do that, or that doesn't taste good, instead of finding something we can appreciate and we can feel joy about. And so within 3 months of starting this practice of just committing to my happiness, 5 minutes a day, within 3 months, the core of my wife's anxiety was her mom's health. We were able to buy our house and move her mom in with us, which alleviated my wife's stress. So her anxiety level came down. She was able to sleep again, so I was able to sleep again. And then 3 months later, I was able to quit that job. And I wound up becoming a personal assistant for a couple people. And 2 weeks after I started that, so 6 months and 2 weeks after starting this practice, the people that I were working for were a little finicky and said that they needed to travel and it wasn't going to work out right now, but I had a contract, so they actually had to pay me the balance of my contract. So they mailed me a check for $50,000, and I took the next 6 months off, and that's when I actually created my business, Decluttering Spaces. So that 5 minutes led me to receiving $50,000 and creating the business that I've had for the last 5 years.
Nice.
From that 5 minutes. So if you can just commit to yourself for 5 minutes, that's where the magic's going to happen. Like, I can't express that enough, like, get that through enough. If that's the only thing you take away from here is that you stop and take 5 minutes a day for yourself, your life will drastically change. I just had someone, a friend of mine that I suggested do this. She wasn't doing anything to take care of herself. After a little over 30 days of her actually practicing, she got another job offer for 80% higher salary than what she was making. A relationship ended, which she thought was a bad thing, which is probably the good thing because then the job offer came. She's taking a month off and just booked a ticket overseas. So she decided to put herself first, and a little over a month, all of those things just happened for her. So that's what I want you to take home with you today. If you don't take anything else about the 7 steps, is to make that time for yourself and the rest will come. That's really the key to all of this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
And you too.
Yeah, I'm honored. I'm so happy you asked me to come.
Any other questions?
Yeah, floor's all yours.
You're very quiet,
No.
Vic.
I was lucky. My brother and my sister-in-law bought a condo up on, where is it? One of the stupid mountains up here.
It's not a condo, it's a cabin.
It's whatever it is,
And Big Bear.
A building.
in Big Bear. Anyway, it was one of these things where his dad had passed away, my parents had passed away before him, and I had all this stuff. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do with this? So I said, Susan, how would you like some nice wool blankets to put in the condo? And she goes, are you kidding? I was able to get rid of all these blankets because I thought they're all stuffed under the bed in plastic bags. I was able to get rid of, what was the other thing that I got to take? And they were thrilled because they thought, we don't have to get this stuff now.
Right? Yeah, there's
So,
always someone who can use it. When we're
It was
stuff.
like, this is perfect. So now I don't have all that clutter there's still clutter under the bed, but there's not like these plastic bags hanging out with all these blankets.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. It's great when you have a home for stuff to go to and you know it's getting used. But if you don't know, I mean, I always tell my clients too, it's like when you have to let go of something that you're not using and you're like giving it to Goodwill or Angel View or whoever your charity is, it's like just let it go and trust that whatever power you believe in, whether it's the Lord, God, Spirit, universe, whatever you call it, will get it to the person who needs it. Like if you just let it go, the rest will take care of itself. Your job is to let go.
That's really interesting because I think that that concept is something that eludes us, is that somebody else could benefit from this item that you really don't need or don't want or you know. I have a collection of, my mother was a knitter,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a collection of sweaters and things that she made for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to give a lot of them to my great nieces and my niece. But those are the things that and I think what you said today will help me do that, because somebody else will appreciate that.
Mhm.
Those hand knitted items that I really,
Afghans.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
how many Afghans can you have?
Down to two.
But that somebody else, and I think that we are, you know, we have an abundance of thrift stores and places in the valley
Yes.
here.
Lots of
that
places
do a
in need.
wonderful job. Discovery Shop, Revivals. I think Eisenhower still has theirs.
Habitat just opened a store.
Right, and so there's so much that good can come from it.
Mhm.
I think if we could get into our heads that good can come from
Mm-hmm.
sharing
Yeah.
those things that no longer you need in your life, that's a great concept. That's
Yeah.
my basic takeaway
Awesome.
today.
Awesome.
Is that
What is
somebody
the-
else will
What is
appreciate.
the best and easiest way to get rid of books?
Books?
Mm.
That's the hard one. I always had a hard time letting go of books, but if you've already read them or you've had them for years and you're not going to read them, like, why are they still sitting on your shelf? No one else can read them if they're sitting there. I mean, they look good. I mean, who doesn't love having a library? I mean, I want a library, but I don't want all these books to lug around. And
My problem isn't reluctant to get rid of them. How to get rid of them?
The library.
or just
Yeah,
donate them
actually,
to just
shopping
donate them
bag.
to any shop.
And I don't want to waste time calling people like the library.
Well,
I'll
no, the
take them to
library,
the library.
you have to take them to the
Take them to the
library and they
library.
take them.
Do they take them automatically or they choose?
They
No,
take
they
everything.
take
Oh, the library.
And
Libraries
then
in
they decide what to do with them. They either
Oh.
recycle it or
There's
they,
Or they have it in their
or they
sale.
sell it.
Mhm.
They have book sales every
Mhm.
couple of times a year. I know the Rancho Mirage Library does, so I assume Palm Desert does the same thing.
Oh,
Well,
good.
yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
And Palm
Solves that
Springs
problem.
too.
And Palm Springs also, yes, yeah. So, yeah, I think the
I kinda
concept
get
of my stuff can bring somebody else joy, that's
That's awesome.
that's my line,
I love that takeaway.
yes.
I love that takeaway.
Well, thank you,
Okay.
Mel.
Oh, my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you so
Thanks a
much for
lot.
coming. Thanks for having me.
I'll be in touch for when we come back in October, and hopefully you can come back and visit with us again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.